What is Italian folk magic, or Stregoneria, and how does it relate to modern renditions or reimaginings of it, including Stregheria, Benedicaria, and Santucci? We're going to talk about that. We're going to dive deep and talk about that in today's program in just a minute. Hey guys, it is Daddy Warlock, your favorite oath breaker and sorcerer, John Michael Salvato, and you are watching another installment of Inner Alchemy, Magic, Manifestation, and Sorcery for the Postmodern Witch. We're committed to bring you new content every Wednesday, every Saturday, but it's not unusual for us to show up with a couple bonus videos throughout the week. So please, if you enjoy our content today, be sure to like and subscribe and click on the little bell icon so that you make sure you never miss another program. And if you're willing to stay tuned to the very end of the show today, I'm going to share with you how you can get a digital copy of my latest book, Magic at the Crossroads, Italian Folk Magick and the Old Religion, as a free gift just for tuning in and helping us get the word out there. So I guess we'll go ahead and start with a minute or two about me for those folks who might be new to the channel. For starters, I'm an hereditary Italian witch, or strega, sometimes referred to by my more butch Italian brothers as stregone because that's the masculine version of strega. But because I'm gay, non-binary, non-gender conforming, strega or strega mago work equally well for me. And so when I say that I'm from an Italian tradition of witchcraft, of hereditary witchcraft, what I mean is that I was taught the ancient unnamed path of the strega from the age of 6. So I've been practicing this form of magic for about 5 decades now. And according to legends, our family supposedly began practicing the craft around the time of the Carthaginian conquests in Genoa and southern Italy and Sicilia. So that would make it about 2,400 years. But again, that's the oral tradition. That's the story that was passed down from generation to generation to generation. And the truth of the matter is everybody has an origin story, and most origin stories are a combination of fact and mythology. So let's not get hung up on that. If you're really interested in learning more about my family history, it's in the book. And you can also read that in an abbreviated version on my blog at inneralchemy.online. So let's go ahead and dive deep. Recently, I saw a video by this beautiful, smoky-eyed practitioner of hoodoo with the most delicious Southern accent I have ever heard. And I realized that so much of what people imagine to be historically intact, so much of what people believe is representative of ancient Italian magic and witchcraft these days is based on some really unfortunate misunderstandings, misrepresentations, and maybe even a bit of desire by some folks to sell books, videos, and workshops. And I'm not here to ridicule that. Like I said, got a book myself, actually have 9 of them. I'm all about selling my books. That's how I do this full time. And have done so my entire adult life. But, like many in the Wiccan influenced world, the person who most people turn to for information about Italian magic has a cult following, and fans who are not even remotely interested in the facts or the history or the ethics of promoting something that's inaccurate, which is something that those of us in the shamanic traditions, in the older folk magic traditions, have difficulty relating to. So let me start off by saying that what the old, authentically Italian, as opposed to modern Italian American practice of witchcraft is and is not. And maybe that'll help to clarify things for you guys and help you understand the purpose of my channel and what it is that I do. So, like I said earlier, this beautiful woman from the South, I think her accent sounded New Orleans, was talking about the highly organized, beautiful initiatory version of Italian American witchcraft created by the late prodigious raven grimassi called Stregheria. Now, Stregheria was created in the 20th century by Grimassi, perhaps with some influence and maybe contributions from other pop culture personalities in New England. And what I would consider it to be is Wicca with Italian herbs and seasonings. And I don't say that in a disparaging way, because I really do think that it's a beautiful tradition. Many of my friends practice that tradition, but it is a 20th century tradition. And pretending that it's not, pretending that it has roots in ancient Italy is problematic. It's a rich tradition that's steeped in what I think are mistaken misinterpretations, probably unintentional, by a man by the name of Charles Leland, who is a fellow native Philadelphian, one of the most absolutely brilliant folklorists of the 19th century, whose body of work included a lot of exploration of the Italian magical traditions and gypsy traditions, Romani people, and just really, I think is an exhaustive look at traditions, but a look from the outside. But Leland imagined that he was warmly taken in as one of their own, and that he didn't realize that Italian folk magic would never take an American, as we call them, in. And so he was welcome to participate and probably even maybe even participate in some of the lower initiations within the Italian old religion, what we call the Vecchia Religione. Now, the Vecchia Religione is a religion, not witchcraft. It is a religion based on the worship and service to Diana in her triform aspect, her brother and lover, Lucifer, who is also called Dianus, as well as a mythology which honors their daughter, Aradia, who is recognized as the mother of all witches. And there's a beautiful story that's crafted and weaved about, Aradia coming into her own, Aradia being the queen or the mother of the witches. And so this idea would be introduced to Leland, and he misunderstood that as being the root of all witchcraft. And that's where the problem begins. You see, in the Italian folk magic tradition, nobody would have initiated him into a path of witchcraft because there was no initiation. Nobody would have told him the secrets because those are just that, and for good reason. But the Vecchia Religione is not a group of witches. It's not a coven as we think of in the English-speaking countries. But what he saw, they were called boschetti. The word boschetto in Italian means a grove of trees, or the woods, if you will. And this was the place where the devotees would gather to honor the divine huntress and her consort. It was a religion, and their gathering was no different than what we would imagine a gathering of Catholics or Episcopalians are today. Now, Catholics and Episcopalians generally don't meet in the woods. They meet in churches. But in that setting, believers gather on Sundays usually and on other special holidays to worship the mythical Jesus, his father and his mother. In the ancient tradition, the Holy Spirit was seen as Sapientia, wisdom, and was the mother. And at their services, officiants at most services, but not all, are priests and bishops, right? So the gathering itself is not made up exclusively of priests and bishops. There's seamstresses and doctors and lawyers, butchers, hairdressers, teachers, and the retired and children at the services. So while every Episcopalian or every Catholic is not a priest or bishop, it's probably safe to say that every priest or bishop who officiates at a Catholic Mass or an Episcopalian Mass or Anglican Mass is Catholic. So that's kind of what happened with what Leland saw and what he misunderstood. And I think it was an honest mistake. So what Leland saw was a grove or a boschetto of worshipers of the cult or religion of Diana. And some of those officiating were very likely witches. We have no way to say that they were or they weren't, but the gathering was of Dianic devotees, not of witches. And some of the high priests, for example, most likely in most of those boschetti were not witches at all. They were just the men who stepped up into that role as high priest. Most of the high priestesses probably were witches. But there were teachers there, there were bakers and butchers and shopkeepers, just like we see in modern day churches today. And there was probably some curious folks too who were just there to kind of check it out. And so while it's true that the story or the mythos of Diana, Lucifer, and Aradia is the story acted out in the liturgical seasons of the Dianic sect, just like the story of Jesus, his Father, and the Holy Spirit or wisdom is enacted out, you know, in the liturgy of the Catholic Church, of the Episcopalian and Anglican liturgies, where the stories come to life, if you will. And that, in my opinion, professionally and as somebody with a doctorate in anthropology, that's where the connection between the boschetti, between the grove or the coven, and witchcraft ended. Now, those were Leland's observations, and he never pretended that they were anything other than that. But in 1939 or 1940, when Gerald Gardner, I believe is his name, but Gardner anyway, who would have never met Charles Leland, because Charles Leland was dead by the time Gardner was just a boy. Gardner took Leland's observations, which were a bit off base to begin with, like I said, and then he expanded upon them to create his own 20th century version of witchcraft, combined with the old religion and combined with some of the really kind of almost oppressive and twisted mythology that the churches would have inspired and overlaid upon what witchcraft is all about. And so Gardner would call his new religion Wicca. Now, Wicca is a combination of the old religion and witchcraft, or what he imagined to be witchcraft. And the reason that I can say this, and the reason that I know that Leland got it wrong, is because not only am I an hereditary witch, but I was also initiated into the Dianic sect, into the old religion, dedicated to Dianus as an infant. I served for more than 3 decades as the high priest of the Boschetto. And at no time in my 56 years of being a witch was it ever suggested by my matriarch and grandmother and any of the folks in our family or anyone else I knew who's a practitioner of Stregoneria that the Boschetto had anything to do with witchcraft, that the coven had anything to do with witchcraft. The coven was a religion. The coven was a religion that celebrates the beings who gave birth to witchcraft. But that was where the connection really ended for us. In fact, that statement would always be offered with a wink, wink, nod, nod, because we understood by the age of 16, I would say, that magic has always coursed through our veins, that it always has been part of the story of humanity, and that these stories, these legends of Diana and Dianus are just the origin stories that primitive people created. No different than we hear stories of Jove, and we hear stories of Kali and Shiva, that we hear stories of Kuan Yin, of the different gods and goddesses who are archetypes upon whom our origin stories are built. But legends and myths are nice. They give us, I think they give us the common ground that we can stand on while we're seeking out other areas around which to connect and be in relationship. And I think for me, that's the value of mythos. That's why I love mythology, not just my own, but the mythology of so many of the world's traditions. But let's understand, mythology is the stuff of religion, and witchcraft has never been a religion until the present day, when it gets lumped into this sort of amalgam that calls itself witchcraft, but which is a combination of witchcraft and religion itself. And so it was that the late Raven Grimassi, in my opinion, and we had conversations of this in the years before his death, would create a religion with connections to the practice of witchcraft, which he called Stregheria, which was much more influenced by Wicca than it was anything in the Italian tradition. And that's okay. It's beautiful, in fact. You're not going to find Italians, though, living throughout Italy who ever use the word Stregheria, because it doesn't exist, and it has nothing to do with the Italian culture. It's an Italian-American innovation. And so you'll hear Stregheria here. You'll hear people who say, oh, yeah, my grandmother practiced Stregheria. It's unlikely that their grandmother, unless they're very young now, that their grandmother ever practiced Stregheria. She probably practiced either Stregoneria or Falu Santucci. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you're not going to find that word in Italy. You're not going to find that word in Sicily. And so what I practice is called Stregoneria. And Stregoneria is simply the word for the craft, the unnamed craft of the wise. It's an ancient system of folk magic, personalized and influenced by every family, every region, every culture, originating in the Italo-Africano culture that we now call Sicily, but really drawing on deep shamanic roots, deep folk magic roots. And so my practice as a practitioner of authentically Italian forms of folk magic is closer to voodoo or hoodoo or shamanic practices than it is to Wicca or the British and Celtic traditions. And there's a tendency when we look at things as Westerners, we look at that tradition and say, okay, so Jean-Michael, tell me how to practice Stregoneria. Well, I can't tell you how to practice Stregoneria because I am only exposed to my family and a little bit of my extended family's tradition. And there is no arrogance in that tradition that says this is the way to practice it. So it's open to expression. That's why I can embrace what Raven Grimassi did, because he took the tradition and he created his own cultural overlay on it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that, and there's nothing wrong in that. It's just not my thing. And so as we look historically, we look at the oppressors and the murderous terrorists that our present history refers to as the Holy Roman Catholic Empire or the Church. And as this church began to exercise its violent influence on those who wouldn't sign up to be part of what they literally called the Army of Christ. That's where we get the word pagan, by the way, because if you weren't a member of the army, if you weren't military, part of the Army of Christ, you were a civilian, and civilians were, the word in Latin was pagan. So my people realized that this church was a terrorist organization. They realized that people were being put to death. And so slowly they began to find clever ways to function under the cover of what appeared to be the Catholic saints and the Catholic liturgies and Catholic prayers. And so a practice known as Benedicaria or Falu Santucci was born. And that's pretty much, for those who are familiar with Santeria, that's pretty much where the Italian version, I guess it's probably a little older than Santeria, but it's the Italian version of Santeria. You know, Santeria has statues of the saints who might represent Oshun or Yemaya. It might represent different deities in the Yoruba tradition. And so too with Benedicaria, Falu Santucci, both terms for really the same practice. There was a tendency to be able to practice, but to practice without drawing the attention of those who might persecute us. And so I was chosen to be one of those who left the Boschetto in appearance, although I was still serving as their high priest, and joined the seminary when I was 16, and learned from our allies on the inside of the Vatican, where we had, long infiltrated part of that practice, to learn how to practice our craft and the old religion in plain sight. And with the exception of a priest by the name of Father Malachi Martin, who you can look up, he wrote a book called Windswept House that attempted to blow the whistle on what we were doing. There's been no real issues with being able to operate right under the current. Now, I personally walked away from institutional religion, retired as an archbishop at the time in the tradition of, in the order of Benedicaria. I did that in 2008 because I just can't tolerate religion at all. I just have no use in my life for it. I respect other people's right to do so. And like I said, I have friends who are Wiccan and who come from traditions that spun off from Wicca, and that's beautiful. It's just not my thing. So I like to say that it's easy to tell when we go out into the world which group of witches somebody belongs to by asking them a really simple question, and that is, which movie did you like better, The Craft or Practical Magic? Now, go ahead and think in your mind which one you like better and see if this isn't right. People who are drawn to the world of covens, who are more comfortable with the 20th century innovations of turning witchcraft into a religion, for better or worse, are going to be drawn to the craft. Those of us who are not in need for the ceremony and pomp, the politics, initiation, or the worship of the gods and goddesses, those of us who prefer to work with and partner with the gods rather than worshiping them, partner with spirits rather than worshiping them, and who work with the energies directly, who follow the path of folk magic or sorcery or shamanic traditions. For for most of us, the tradition that we like is practical magic, or the movie we like is Practical Magic. Now, I happen to like both movies, don't get me wrong, but I'm more drawn to, or I resonated more with Practical Magic. In addition to the fact that I think Stockard Channing is like my inner divine feminine personification. But understand, just because I'm emphatic in telling people that the sometimes uncomfortable truth that they don't want to hear because it might interfere with their book sales or their blog partnerships, or they think somehow it's going to dishonor their friendship with those who've gone before us. Just because I'm willing to confront those misunderstandings doesn't mean I don't love and revere the modern day traditions of Wicca and Stregheria and all of the other new pagan traditions. I do honor and respect them dearly. And if you come from one of those traditions, know that I will defend your right to celebrate as you see fit, celebrate what resonates with you, but these are simply not my path. So I wrote a book not to contradict the fanciful and imaginative backstory that Raven Grimassi laid out, but to offer an alternative based on history and fact for those who say, you know what, that doesn't resonate with me. Mythos and legend doesn't necessarily resonate with me. Maybe I'm more scientific, maybe I'm more secular, maybe I'm more Luciferian. And so all of those traditions based on initiation that draw on. I mean, I have great respect for the people who are part of those coven traditions, because they have to deal with a lot more egos and politics and backstabbing than those of us who are folk magic practitioners, hoodoo practitioners, Seguinaria practitioners ever have to deal with in our entire lifetimes. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope this helps to make a little more clear the difference between authentic and ancient Italian practice of folk magic, Stregoneria, and the 20th century religion of Stregheria. Both of them deserve our respect. Both of them are beautiful in their own ways. And for me, Stregoneria is the path that resonates most with me. And I suppose it's possible that for some, both could be possible. I don't know what that would necessarily look like, but I hope this has been helpful. And remember, I count on your liking and subscribing and sharing this content if you found it interesting or even provocative. And if you will do just that, if you will like, share, and subscribe, as well as clicking the little notification thing, the bell, then and then share this video to Facebook or Twitter, and then comment down below and tell me that you did so. I will send you an ebook version of my 255-page book, Magic at the Crossroads, which is available, by the way, at Amazon and on our website and bookstores all over the country. I will send you that ebook absolutely for free. And the reason for that is that I didn't write the book to make money. I wrote the book to help people who might be looking for a folk magic tradition that resonates with them, especially Italians who would like to do this. But Stregoneria can be practiced by anyone. And so the book might open a doorway for you to begin to dig deeper and to seek out relationships where someone can teach you that tradition. And as we say at the end of every one of our broadcasts, thank you so much for being here. Make sure that you watch our Wednesday afternoon talk show called The Brew. Think of it as The View, only with a queer pagan host and some incredible guests who talk about magical thinking, creating your best life, and all things metaphysical. That's on Wednesdays right here on the channel. And as I said, we put new content up on Wednesdays and Saturdays, sometimes even more frequently than that. But stay in the moment. That's where the power is. No matter what your practice or tradition, if you come back to the moment, that's where your power is. The past holds no sway over you, and the future hasn't even begun. So it's not real. But when you fill that present moment with gratitude, when you fill that present moment with love and compassion and a desire to serve, to alleviate suffering, then you open the door for the abundance that's waiting for you. And I promise you, the best is yet to come. We'll talk to you soon.